OTB AM brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. We'll give away a Gillette starter pack a little bit later on in the show. If you want to enter, just tell us who you think should be in our performance rankings: green, orange or red. Certainly in the red. Dublin football, is it in crisis? Anthony Moyles is with us this morning. Anthony, good morning to you.
Morning, gents. How are we?
Yeah, good. Owen is unbelievably excited and desperately trying to rein in the level of excitement. There was a full meeting with the Kerry Mafia in the aftermath of the game.
There is no Kerry Mafia.
And the first best trick that the devil ever pulled was pretending he didn't exist. Here's the thing: they know that they have a team now, and they're trying not to overreact because it was only Dublin. It was only this Dublin team, and so you can't read too much into it.
Yeah, and Dublin are in transition, etc., etc. All the excuses you can have coming out. They have a team. I don't think anyone's ever going to suggest that they don't have a team. But what impressed me most about Kerry, I suppose, was their defence. Actually, we probably questioned it a little bit last year as regards their setup, but they were rock solid at the weekend. Now, listen, Dublin did not help themselves at all. But Kerry from the get-go, you could see it you could see the intent. The intent was to be, aggressive in the face of the Dublin players. They got a number of their matchups right. Barry always has a good time against Fenton. He annoys him. He gets in his face. He kind of just follows him, tracks him around the place. And bar a bit of a spell in the second half. He did that pretty well, and he put the shackles on him. But some of the new guys they brought in, they weren't afraid of the physical stuff. They were certainly getting in the faces of the Dublin players. And look, at the end of the day, I actually think they could have been well out of sight at halftime, even more out of sight. They missed probably 3 to 4 relatively easy chances in the first 10 minutes. When fellas might say, the players were getting their eye in, but Gainey missed a handy one, Clifford missed, I think, 2. And you were kind of saying, actually, their scores they should have had. They probably could have been 7 or 8 or 9 points up. And actually, I think the scoreline in the first quarter just flattered Dublin, really.
So if we just stick with Kerry for a moment then before we get into Dublin, like those question marks around the defence, is there a case to be made, Anthony, that those question marks kind of rear their head mostly when Kerry are under severe pressure, say whether it's Cork in 2020 or Tyrone last year, and that it will very much be jury is out until they're in one of those very high pressure scenarios, and we will see how they hold up, because I guess being 13 points up at one stage in a game doesn't necessarily constitute a high pressure scenario.
No, it doesn't, Owen, you're right, but at the same time, you can only do what's put in front of you, so, they obviously decided after last week, okay, Dublin are coming down here. Now, look, we get into the Dubs, as you say, but because they definitely, it was a massive factor in their naivety and their tactical play and their strategy, which left me a bit kind of bamboozled. But, the Kerry guys were out in front, they were tackling hard, they were hunting in packs. They were very organised. You remember, I don't know if you guys remember, but last year they seemed to have a bit of a situation where there wasn't really that much communication going on. Players were drifting to other players. There was a kind of a thing of, there was a lot of effort and an awful lot of kind of rush to the ball. And what I got was this sense of fellas who were really trying hard, but they were, kind of leaving their brain a little bit in the dressing room. So they were rushing to a player, and all of a sudden there was a guy in behind him, pop pass over the head, goal, stuff like that. And actually the opposite, of course, was happening at the weekend. So you got. I think they were calm. They were much more disciplined. I thought they were more in control. They were very, very confident at the back. On a dirty night, they were well able to play the ball across their own goal line. They were handy enough going back to the keeper. They epitomised coolness, I suppose. Now, the Dublin tackling wasn't overly great in the forwards, and they did kind of allow them out handily enough. But the big thing for me, and the massive change is their speed now coming out of the defence. They have no problem. There's no going back and across the pitch. As soon as a man gets a ball, especially with his back, where he's facing his own goal, he generally tries to turn himself and just take off. And, there was a number of them. Murphy did runs like that. O'Buglig did some great runs up the pitch where he just, especially against the breeze, he managed to carry the ball 40, 50 yards, a couple of hand passes off with other guys, and Morley did the same, and their speed coming out of defence. Like some of the Dublin guys were just flapping at them, and actually some of the Dublin guys actually just stopped chasing them. Their speed was so immense coming out of it. So they've with a couple of guys like White to come back, you're starting to say this unit now is really, really strong. Like some of their speed coming out of defence actually surprised me. Like as I said, they were carrying the ball and actually continuing to move away from Dublin players, which is very rare. You usually see the chasing guy obviously start to catch up. I thought midfield was very strong. I thought O'Connor had an unbelievable game, and he's becoming a real leader. And he's becoming the guy that he allows Barry do his dog work, and he's the guy that just has that extra bit of class, an extra bit of talent. He can kick scores, he can do whatever you want yourself. But no, they were very impressive. So although you might want to dampen it down, I think I'll wrap it up with it.
What age is Diarmuid O'Connor? What
22, 23.
So this is kind of his flowering into one of the leaders of the team.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I was kind of watching it back yesterday, and he was interviewed as part of the man of the match process, and he was saying that himself and Jack Barry are kind of eager to get back in quickly and get a bit of consistency under their belt, because that has been the issue with Diarmuid O'Connor. Has just been a little bit inconsistent over the last little while. He's been frustrating to watch because everybody knows his ceiling is outrageously high. He is the potential next great midfielder in Kerry, and he showed that on Saturday night exactly where his ceiling is at. What's interesting is that, kind of like standing in the terrace on Saturday night, it seems that Mike Quirke is having quite a big influence on what Kerry are doing against the kick-out. He is communicating directly almost with Diarmuid O'Connor, telling him what to do at each kick-out. And obviously Kerry have done a lot of work over the last 7-8 years on Cluxton's kick-out, for example. It seems that Quirke in particular is having a big influence on that midfield at the moment. Well, if you look at it on the flip side of things then, Anthony, because I'm really interested to get your take on this. There was a moment then in the second half, and this is just kind of like plucking one moment out, where Dublin had a free kick maybe 60 yards out from the Kerry goal. So it was a dead ball. It was the opportunity for them to show us what their preferred style of play is. And I can't remember who took the free kick, and I know they had the wind at their back, but it goes straight in long into the Kerry full back line, and Kerry gobble up the ball and they go back down the other end of the pitch. But what is the plan there from Dublin in that moment? Was that just a sense of desperation chasing the game, or are they really not sure what they're supposed to do in those moments? Because that is not something we would have seen recently from Dublin at all.
Well, I think there was small little instances of that throughout the game, and it's funny, like we spoke about the veil starting to slip a little bit last week, and I think everyone was kind of putting it down to, well, it's a team in transition, and of course it's a team in transition, but what's I think where the question marks are going to come is that, well, albeit that it's a team in transition, you still have enough All-Ireland winners on the pitch, and there doesn't seem to be any semblance of, as you say, identity or strategy, or who are we? What kind of play, and are we going to set up, smartly against the team? So you end up in a situation where you're going down to Kerry, you lose the toss, so you're in a pretty horrible situation. But all the pressure all week was, you played the ball over and back, too many hand passes. So straight away they start to try to play the ball in direct into the full forward line. On a dirty night, the ball isn't perfect, it's bouncing around, and the amount of times Dublin turned over the ball from, kicking 60-40, 50-50 balls into their full forward line from way back. And I think I remember the one you were talking about where it was kicked from, way too far back. It was actually landing on around the 21 with Kerry guys just running out looking to fist the ball. So, for me, you're kind of going, what would you look to do there? You could look to go down to Kerry. You look to try to frustrate in the first half, especially playing against the elements. You're going to say, right, we're just going to lock this down. We're going to get at least two players on Clifford and O'Shea inside. We're going to have a man marking Paudie Clifford to stop him trying to be quarterback the game. But I felt sorry for Davy Byrne. Davy Byrne was eventually hauled off Clifford and ended up playing kind of as a half-back. But the poor fella, I'd say, was dizzy at that stage because he was marking him one-on-one. He was getting turned left, right and centre. He had no help. The ball coming in was absolutely perfectly played in by the Kerry lads. So you were kind of going, there's not just one thing. And I think it's cheap and it's lazy just to say, it's a team in transition. Dublin have got a number of question marks over them. There's a point if you want to really watch and you look at the identity of Dublin from here to a couple of years ago, there's a free actually on around 30 minutes, and Howard is taking it. And I don't know if you remember this, but there was a bit of a delay. So Howard has the ball, and he's probably standing just inside his own half, close to midfield. And there's players all around him. The Kerry guys, to be fair, had kind of marked up on the Dublin players. And as the whistle is blown to take the free, he kind of looks across, and there's a diagonal pass on. But obviously he says to himself, I don't fancy that. It's across the pitch. It's against the breeze. It could go anywhere. But all of the Dublin players are just standing. There's about 8 guys in the picture. And all of them are standing beside their Kerry man, pointing towards the diagonal pass. But none of them are actually making any major attempt to get free for him. So, of course, he's standing there. No one's really, they used to always have the outlet just behind you. Just kick the ball back and you'd start the process. But instead he kicks this aimless 50-yard ball up in the air, down between a Kerry guy and a Dublin guy. I think it was Dean Rock. And anyway, the ball gets broken. It comes down. And if you remember, Kerry work it across the far side of the pitch. It comes to Clifford, and he kicks that unbelievable score where he feigns to go on his right, turns inside and kicks it on his left. And again, one-on-one. And if you watch again, there's Dublin players tracking back, and no one makes an attempt to try to double up on Clifford and help Davy Byrne. So, just in those... if you're doing video work from a Dublin perspective this weekend, or this week, should I say, you're looking at that microcosm of 2 minutes, and you're saying, lads, this is everything. This is you wouldn't see it in junior football. It was as amateur as you get, and it was so un-Dublin like. Don't mind, we haven't got scorers on the pitch, or we're not, but I don't get the semblance at all that they realise, what they're actually doing at any moment in time. And the thing about Dublin in those last number of years when they were in the All-Irelands was, in every single instance of every game, whether they were behind in the last couple of minutes, there was a feeling of, we know what we're doing in the moment, and we know what we're going to do, and we have already practiced this. And I just get the sense that's not there anymore.
We'll get more good evidence one way or another after the Mayo game in 2 weeks. No better opponent to roll into town to test you. The way Mayo seem to be pretty happy with life at the moment, apart from some of the injuries they're suffering. Let's talk about Armagh and Tyrone, though. The rivalry is back. Armagh are back. A full house, a feverish atmosphere, and more red cards than you can shake a stick at.
Yeah, where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with the rivalry. Yeah. And let's start with Armagh, because in fairness, they deserve, what we've seen from them is a style of play, patterns emerging, a physicality that is years in the making, a manager reaching the full potential of his own, massive levels of experience now at this stage, 15 years of intercounty management.
Yeah, it's amazing, actually. When you think back, he has just managed to kind of get that tenure, to kind of unbeknownst to people. It's a long time that he's been around, obviously, the intercounty scene. And as you say, Ger, massive experience. The team has definitely been in the making. You can see them, the physicality that they have. Every one of them is well able to, ship tackles, hit, do what's needed. They are all very, very athletic. Unbelievably athletic, strong runners. There's a couple of areas that they need to improve on, and I'd say there's a couple of areas that Kieran wasn't too happy about in the second half. But let's look at the positives first. I think they got off to a great start. The goal was probably a bit fortuitous, but at the same time, they probably should have had another one after it. I think they had Tyrone on the rack, very much so. Very confident play, and they were running really, really, really hard. Actually, so much so that I think they probably emptied a bit too much of the tank in the first half, because they kind of fell off a bit in the second half. But they wanted to start fast. They wanted to set down markers with Tyrone. Typical kind of probably, post All-Ireland hangover. Tyrone were kind of in it, but weren't really in it until they woke up in the second half and said, right, we're getting the lard beaten out of us here, lads. Time to stand up. So it was a great test for McGeeney, great test for Armagh. O'Neill didn't have as good a day as he had the previous week, although his 2 scores in the first half were fantastic. But your Hampsey and the boys started to tighten up, as I say, and started to try to impose their physicality on the game. And you had a situation where it became a real ding-dong battle in that second half. Like, a brilliant game. McGeeney's building, like, I mean, there's no doubt about it. Ulster, we said it last week, the level of competition there is going to be savage again this year. And he has a brilliantly mobile unit who just to counter the argument that I have for Dublin, none of them do anything that they shouldn't do. And I don't mean that they're hamstrung by it. But if you watch Og Burns, for example, a lot of the time he comes down the left wing at pace, and he will invariably look to dish the pass off. So he'll try to suck in players, and then he'll look for and a couple of times you're kind of saying, geez, he probably should have taken a shot there. But he doesn't do it. But actually in the second half, when they were really under a cosh, it was about 60 odd minutes gone, he got the ball coming in off the end line, if you remember, down the far end. And there was no one else around. And it was a really, really big, vital score, actually. It was a score to push them back out because Tyrone were all over him. And he took it and he kicked it. So you're kind of saying, these guys are all well prepared. They're playing to a style. They have a few things to work on, Ger. I think when Tyrone started to run at them, they fouled a bit too much in the second half, where there was loads of bodies, actually. They had 8 or 9 bodies in that central area. They protect that central area very, very well. They generally pull back a midfielder into that central area, and he will look to come and kind of like what Dublin used to do with John Small, he kind of acts as that +1. And they don't give much away, but in the second half they were kind of throwing hands in and they were fouling Tyrone a bit much. And actually they kind of, due to their probably indiscipline, they let Tyrone, one of the factors to let Tyrone back into the game. But there's no doubt about it, he's building a very, very strong squad, and a team that, you know what, they should go very far. They should go far in this championship.
How is there something that Armagh fans can look at over the last 2 weeks that will give them hope that it's not going to be a situation like, say, Galway even in 2018 or even in 2020? I know COVID played a part in 2020, where you have these unbelievable starts to the league where they're taking out some of the best teams and things just fizzle out a little bit, especially once the championship gets up and running. Because it certainly feels to me as if this is real. This is a legitimate All-Ireland contender in Armagh. Like, do you share that confidence?
It's hard I think it's hard to keep those levels. Like, you even see the match yesterday, the amount of hard running that they did yesterday. They had a very different animal yesterday to Dublin last week, so they couldn't just spray those passes in and kind of play counter-attack football. Tyrone kind of sat in and said, listen, you're going to have to try to beat us with some kind of interlinking type play in the first half, which they did, and they worked it very, very well. And Tyrone tried to catch them in the counter, but their ability to run back and then, clog up space. Like, I mean, they really expended a massive amount of energy. There is, I think, talking to most coaches, they will tell you that it's still a long season, and trying to keep fellas at that level and trying to keep them fresh and trying to keep them kind of really enthusiastic about things and just, hopping off the ground. That's the massive challenge. And when you decide that you're going kind of, flat out on the league, is to try and maintain that through the championship, because other teams, such as like Tyrone, will probably have it off a little bit and they'll start to gear it up as they go through. So that's probably going to be McGeeney's biggest challenge, I would reckon, is trying to maintain that level of consistency, but to be fair, you know what, he's right. They have to, Division 1, it's there. They can't be the whipping boys, and they need to set some markers down. So he's going about it, in my view, the right way.
What about Tyrone?
Yeah, I think they'll be okay, Ger. I think they'll be happy enough yesterday. They'll come off that pitch and they'll go, we were well out of it. We were, we could have been got the lard knocked out of us. We could have been 15, 16 points of a hammering, but instead we stuck in, we dug in, we matched whatever physicality was being thrown at us, and as a matter of fact, we caused a bit of panic in the Armagh. Like, there was about 2 or 3 points in it, and the camera switched to McGeeney. McGeeney didn't look like a happy boy. He was worried. So Tyrone will say to themselves, no, we're okay. We were coming back. Fellas got time. Fellas got minutes in the legs. They're still an unbelievable team for some of their cornerbacks to come up and pip scores. It's a great thing to have where you're up against that mass defence and the ball goes out to your number 2 or your number 4, and they're confident enough. Like, Hampsey scored another raker of a point yesterday. McKernan kicked another great score. So it's that kind of thing of, not a lot of teams have that. Some teams, you see the ball going back to 2, 3, or 4, and you're saying, well, he's not going to shoot, so all we need to do is stay on our main guys again. But with Tyrone, they still have that ability. I think they'll be okay, Jared. They're building. They will be as strong as ever. And as a matter of fact, Canavan was getting more game time yesterday and was kind of linking well. So, they're probably adding a little bit more. McShane, obviously, as well, coming back and getting the game time. So, no, I think he'd be happy enough. If they were bet by kind of 9 or 10, or and it just petered out, I'd say he'd be saying to himself, right, do they have the fight in them again this year? But I think they showed enough fight that I don't think they'll be too worried.
Too much fight with the red cards, perhaps.
Yeah, look, I think this stuff of the dragging around it, like, I'd rather a fella stand up square onto me and the two of us duke it out than a fella kind of grab me behind by my neck where I'm kind of a little bit unbeknownst to what's going on and drag me down. It's quite a dangerous thing, to be honest. I think it is. I don't think. Look, there was so much going on, and it went on for so long. Goff was nearly like a fella sitting down with a box of popcorn at one stage. He was just kind of sitting over there, kind of saying, yeah, him, and I'll have him. And I think what he mostly reacted to was that thing of someone pulling a guy around the neck and pulling him backwards where he was maybe facing someone else. I think guys who are grappling and maybe on the ground, at the end of the day, that's just you're really holding each other and there's not a whole pile going on. But I think definitely this idea of, which they could do, which is this kind of thing of someone grabbing you from behind.
The MMA chokeholds. That's where it's come from. It is MMA. They're,
Well, there it is. Yeah. And it wasn't done. Like, it wasn't done when I played. It was much more, as you say, face to face. You didn't have that kind of thing. And actually, like, I know a couple of years ago they tried to bring in, and they still have it, that the third man in will get punished. But you see, there's grey area there with that chokehold, and there's a grey area with this kind of idea of getting someone in a headlock. So fellas have probably said, well, this is the grey area. So if you are going to go in, you're going to go in this way. You're not going to go in swinging, because if you go in swinging, you're definitely getting gate. But if you go in and grab someone and pull them down to the ground, a lot of damage could be done. And there's no doubt about it, it could be done. And of course, if it's happening there, it's happening all over the country. So, it was unbelievable to see Goff do 4 in a row. It was quite amazing. But it's going to be interesting to see the fallout of it. And of course, there'll be, the DDD or whatever it is, there'll be videos and there'll be evidence. But I think it needs to be stamped out, because it actually is quite a dangerous tackle. And people will say, oh, it was handbags. But, you'd nearly rather see fellas squaring up to each other than this kind of. I actually think it's a cynical, and it's not a very brave tackle to do. If I'm coming up behind you, Ger, and you don't see me coming, and I grab you around the neck, and you're maybe engaged with someone else, and I grab you around the neck and pull you down to the ground, it's a cheap one, and I don't like it.
So the red cards were, in that instance, it's the correct approach, and actually everybody taking their suspensions and maybe Dick-Tac going out next time this happens, keep with the red cards. The game might change for the better if we stop this.
Well, I think, are you going to stop? There was a bit of stuff in the Kerry game as well, where fellas are holding each other, and you're going to get that, right? And that there's going to be instances where that happens, start of a game or after half time and stuff like that. And mostly now it's about me trying to hold you and pushing you. So everyone knows that as soon as you go near the face or anything like that, you're gone. So guys are trying to kind of stamp their physicality on it. But at the end of the day, really, it's a load of posturing. That's all it is. If you want to be physical and if you want to be, kind of set markers, you set markers down on the ball. So if the ball is there to be won and there's a guy near it, well, he's going to know all about it, because you're going to go for the ball with everything you have. And that's where, you see this kind of, when you talk about the physicality in the game, or a team setting themselves down, that's where it really comes to. The ferociousness in the tackle, not necessarily taking a fella's head off, but just being brave, going down on the ball, turning guys over within the rules of the thing. But this idea of, we're just going to go around and we're going to kind of, as you say, it's posturing to me, and by the way, but the whole idea of this grappling and this kind of thing around the neck is that someone has seen that there's a grey area and they're like, okay, well, we can push it to this far and this is how we can get a little bit over the edge without necessarily suffering major disciplinary processes. But of course, I think it should happen, and I think you're right. I think to stamp it out, they have to set a marker now and say, no, this is an issue. You can't grab someone around the neck. You can't do a chokehold. And you're going to suffer the consequences if you do.
Anthony, good stuff. We'll leave it there. Thanks a million.
No bother, lads. Talk to you soon.
Anthony Moyles giving us some thoughts there on the weekend's action. Anything else you wanted to talk about?
Your Kildare, the deflation has already begun on the scenes from Newbridge previous week, has it?
It's going to be very difficult for Kildare to stay up, right? That's the situation they're in. They're outside your top 8 in the power rankings for a good while, and those teams who come up from Division 2, staying in Division 1 is the most important thing you can possibly happen. So there's a few big games coming up. There's an opportunity for them to stay up, given the way that other results have gone. It's not done just yet. But
still got to play at Dublin, so that's guaranteed 2 points for Kildare. It's the key one.
In Newbridge, of course.
Yeah. It doesn't really matter. They take them in Croke Park as well at the moment. So
maybe they want to play them in Croke Park. Maybe there is.
I've heard that logic. Yeah,
there is part of that. But Mayo's victory over Monaghan. Obviously, we haven't talked about Mayo yet, but we will talk about Mayo. I think a bit more in the performance rankings. McLaughlin's injury is a concern. Galway are back. Flecky Galway's gone. They beat Down in Down.
Yeah, it was they were sensational. Obviously, the week before. And Galway would have expected them to be in the mix for promotion for sure, like themselves and Roscommon and Derry look like the 3 most likely at this point to be fighting it out for those promotion spots at the moment.
Well, we'll come back to this in the power rankings, right?
Power rankings, yeah, 100%.
Because the power rankings is in crisis. It was wrong last week.
Yeah.
So wrong.
No, hold on a minute, what?
Yeah, we'll get to that again.